Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about tonight's slate of action. And as you may have already noticed, it's Clayton Kershaw Day, $15,100 for him. And when you consider his price, he was a big disappointment last time out. Just 5 strikeouts over 7 innings against Colorado. For most starters, that's a pretty good start, but not for Clayton Kershaw. Although, you look at his numbers over the past month, he's been absolutely incredible. 36.6% strikeout rate, 17.4% swing and strike rate. This guy is absolutely the top pitcher in all of baseball, and I mean, most times it's not even that close. This is the guy you want to anchor your cash games tonight if you can afford him. 15-1, there's no way I can recommend a fade. You got some other options that have been solid recently. Carlos Carrasco has only made 2 starts over the past month. Made 1 against Kansas City, 1 against White Sox. Really struggled against the White Sox and was pretty good against the Royals in the next game. And what he's looking at here over the past month over his 15 and a third innings, though, was a 39.1% strikeout rate. But some other things you don't like, 9.4% walk rate, 1.76 home runs per 9. Obviously, small sample size because those 2 starts and then 1 more right before that. But he did have 11 strikeouts in that game against the Yankees. Facing off against a White Sox team that's on the road. You got to love his upside here at 11,400. Right behind him, Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray has been, I don't want to say awful, but when you factor in his price tag, I'm not targeting him. He's giving up too much hard contact. He's on the road against a Houston team that hits the ball well. So if I'm paying for someone near here, it's a little bit risky, but I like Cole Hamels in tournaments against Seattle. This is a guy who has faced this team a lot recently, actually. 3 of his last 7 starts has been against Seattle. And while he hasn't been great in any of them, he's been okay in most of them. He's a guy that pitches deep. It is a 9-run total, though, so I'm a little bit hesitant on Cole Hamels. But this is a game that means a lot to this team. So looking at Cole Hamels' numbers over the past month, he's keeping the ball in the park at a great clip, .26 home runs per 9. Only an 18.2% strikeout rate, though, which you don't like. But a 12.5% swing and strike rate indicates that those numbers should be coming up. So I like him. I like Scott Kazmir against his old team at home. He hasn't been great, though, at 9,200. He's another one of those guys that you feel good about, but you don't feel like he's going to crush his price tag at 9,200. Plenty of other good options. Garrett Richards on the road at Minnesota has been alternating good and bad starts, which is a good thing if that trend continues tonight. Struggled in his last start at Seattle. Gets Minnesota, who is a better home offense than road offense. So I think he's an okay option there. But for the most part, none of these guys really, really stand out. One guy who had one really, really good start against this same team, Vidal Nuno. 1 hit, 10 strikeouts over 7 innings. In fact, that's the only start that one of only 2 starts he's made recently got rocked in his other start. But he's a guy I'm going to throw out there in a couple tournaments because obviously that game was at Seattle, not in Texas. Big difference there. But $5,900 for him. He's the guy I'll throw out in a couple tournaments. Not a guy I'm playing in cash games, though. As you look for cheap guys, there's really not much that stands out at all as far as a compliment to Clayton Kershaw. You're going to have to decide Kershaw or bats tonight. Carlos Rodon is a guy who has some upside. Pitched very well against this Cleveland team in his last start. Just 1 run over 7 innings with 8 Ks. So he's probably the cheapest guy that I feel even decent about here. Jared Eichhoff has had a couple good starts, a couple bad starts as well. Very good in his last one. Now he gets an Atlanta team on the road at Turner Field. So $7,400. I don't think he's a bad option. Had 8 Ks over 7 innings against the Cubs last time out. Atlanta doesn't strike out a ton, but this is, I think, a fairly safe option for you here because there's really only one bat that I'm targeting him with, and I'm sure you know who that is. Moving over here to catcher, Derek Norris, of course, gets Johan Fland at Coors Field. Gotta like him at $4,300. Don't love the price tag, but certainly a guy with some big upside. Sal Perez had a big game yesterday against his friend Justin Verlander. Actually did most of his damage after Verlander left, but he's a decent play at $3,600 as well. And then as you scroll down, Willen Rosario gets Robbie Erlin, who's making his first start of the season. Been in AAA all year. This is the guy that throughout his career has crushed left-handed pitching. So Willen Rosario, certainly a guy to consider here. As far as cheaper guys, Yan Gomes hits lefties very well. Gets Carlos Rodon. Like I said, Rodon's been pitching well, but at $3,100, I think he's worth a look in your tournaments. Outside of that, cheap guys, nobody really stands out. If Dustin Garneau gets a start again, he had a solid game last night. 14 points, $2,400. He's probably one of the best punts at Coors Field, really at any position. So that's about the deepest that I'd go there. First base options here. You got Joey Votto against Taylor Youngman. He's finally served his suspension last night, so he's going to be back in the lineup tonight against Taylor Youngman. You got to like that. Prince Fielder gets the lefty, Nuno, who did pitch well against his team, and obviously you prefer Fielder against a righty. Miguel Cabrera, $4,600. Had a good game last night. Finally broke out of his slump. 2 hits with a double, couple RBIs. $4,600. You got to like him in your tournaments there. I like Kendrys Morales against Matt Boyd. Obviously a switch hitter. Hasn't been great against lefties, but he's been above average. Eric Hosmer is lefty-lefty. I wish I could target him, but I'll look at Adam Lind against Josh Smith, who has not been very good in his small time in the major leagues. Other options at first base. Albert Pujols continues to be cheap. He also continues to really struggle. So he's a guy, tournament-only option, a single bullet type of guy for me there. Other guys you can look at down cheaper. Mark Trumbo gets a lefty, and Cole Hamels, who I mentioned has been good but not great recently, $3,600 for some upside. Victor Martinez against Volquez at $33, another option. And then Justin Morneau, if he's in the lineup, $3,100 is a nice price tag for him at Coors Field. Second base options here. I like Ben Zobrist, despite the fact that he's from the right side. I prefer him from the left side, but Matt Boyd has just been awful. Very giving to both hands of hitters. Ian Kinsler, this is still a Detroit team that's struggling, but Kinsler, 4 hits last night, back-to-back, 15-plus DraftKings performances, and Volquez hasn't been in very good form, so I like him tonight. Other options to look at, cheaper, you look at Justin Turner, tournament only, though, because he's facing Liriano, who has been up and down, but he's a guy you can consider. Odubel Herrera is a guy that I like at $3,500 if you're looking for an upside play in tournaments, but I'd much prefer Jed Jerko against a lefty and Flan at Coors Field, that same price. Disappointed last night, but this is a guy with a ton of power. He's really cheap, and he's in Coors Field, so those reasons alone put him in play. Scooter Gennett, if you need a cheaper guy at $3,100, is a fine option there as well. And so is Darnell Sweeney at $2,600, switch hitter against Weber. Third base, Nolan Arenado's the guy you want, $5,700. If you're paying for Kershaw, though, it's going to be tough to fit him. But if you're paying up, that's who you want easily. Other guys down below that, I love Adrian Beltre against Fidel Nuno. He just continues to hit the ball very well in the second half, $4,400 for him. Yangervis Solarte at $4,300 is a guy that, he's a good hitter, not a great hitter, but a guy you need to consider because he's in Coors Field. Same goes for DJ LeMahieu, who's having a solid season. Not a ton of upside, but definitely a guy that is a viable cash game and GPP option here. Danny Valencia had a monster game last night with 2 home runs and 3 hits. Faced off against Scott Kazmir, who has pitched well, but Scott Kazmir is also lefty, and Danny Valencia smashes lefties. So I'm putting him on my tournament radar here. David Freese, if he's got a nice lineup spot, he's been a guy who's been hitting decent recently, $3,300. Mike Pelfrey gives up a lot of hard contact, so he's a good option for you there. Scrolling all the way down, you're looking for some value. Elian Herrera, if he's in the lineup at $2,700, is not a bad way to go. And then Micah Vilas at $2,500 against Rodon. He's another guy that hits lefties well, doesn't really do a whole lot else, but that's all you're looking for cheap here tonight. Shortstops, Jose Reyes at Coors Field against the pitcher making his first start of the season. Got to be the guy that you're looking at as far as cash games if you're paying up. But Francisco Lindor against the lefty. Francisco Lindor against most pitchers right now. This guy's been incredible. $4,600 for him. Carlos Correa right behind him against Sonny Gray, which earlier in the season is a tough matchup, but not now. Sonny Gray has not been pitching well, like I mentioned earlier, so I like Correa. I'm probably going to be paying up here if I can. Obviously, though, if you're getting Kershaw, you can't. Freddie Galvis is an okay option at $3,300, but I'm looking to save even more here. Corey Seager continues to smash the ball. Hit another homer last night. It is a tough matchup, lefty-lefty against Liriano, but I'm going to give him a look, though, in some tournaments because he has been hitting the ball so well. Looking all the way down for cheap guys. If you get Daniel Descalso in, he's an okay option. I don't anticipate he's going to start, but he's absolute minimum at Coors Field. I think you do worse than just slotting him in. But I think the guy that I'll probably be looking at, assuming he's in the lineup and he should be, is Andres Blanco at $2,400. He's an okay hitter. Bats about 300. Not a guy with a lot of upside, but decent cash game play for you. Next up, the outfield. Goes without saying, San Diego Padres bats against Johan Fland. Upton, Myers, Kemp, all these guys in play. Take your pick with them. Upton the most expensive, then Myers, then Kemp. I think you can go. I think Kemp's the guy you probably want, but Upton and Myers have both been hitting well recently as well. Mike Trout's price finally back up after letting everyone down with that random rain out last night, but obviously that wasn't Mike Trout's fault, so he's certainly in play here in tonight's game. Nelson Cruz gets a lefty in Hamels. Mentioned I'm not trying to pick on Hamels, but Cruz obviously in a lefty. In a matchup with a lefty, you always got to consider him. Ryan Braun against Josh Smith at home. Great matchup for him. Zobrist and Kane, both those guys in play for the Kansas City Royals. If you're looking for a cheap guy from that game, Johnny Gomes against the lefty and Boyd, just $2,400. You assume he'll be in the lineup because they are facing lefty. Colorado lefties in the outfield. More tournament plays for me because they are pricey. Blackman, Gonzalez, and they're facing a lefty. Neither one great against lefties. Blackman a little bit better, but you also don't expect this guy to be going pitching 6-7 innings. So certainly you could see some of that San Diego bullpen at some point. And then your other options, Jay Bruce homered again last night. He's finishing strong this season. He's a guy that's up to 22 homers now. Overall numbers in the season, not great, but he's a guy with some big-time upside. So I'm giving him a look there as well. Other guys to consider here, Chris Davis, Baby Crush, continues to smash the ball. I like him. I like George Springer against Sonny Gray. Same goes for Colby Rasmus. Big-time upside there. Nick Markakis is a lefty against Jared Eichhoff. Eichhoff has allowed over 400 WOBA to lefties so far in his short time, so he's a guy that you need to give a look to. Corey Dickerson, another guy, another one of these Colorado bats. He's only 3,500. He's a guy to consider for your tournaments. Not a guy I'll be playing in cash games. And then once you keep going all the way down, if you want the ultimate GPP play, Gregory Polanco did homer off of Clayton Kershaw last time. Obviously, that's somewhat anecdotal, but he really did. And it was a leadoff home run. He's a guy who has hit pretty much all hands of pitcher as well. So tournament only, of course. But another guy I'm looking at is David Murphy. Was going to bat leadoff last night, but then obviously the game got rained out, so that didn't happen. But $2,800 for him. Good spot against Mike Pelfrey. Justin Ruggiano continues to hit the ball very well. Had another big game last night. $2,700 for him. Makes one of the best values on the slate. Ryan Rayburn, then, last one I'm going to mention here against Carlos Rodon. So good luck tonight. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.